I have some really big news. I'm going to release my first book. It's going to be the first chronicle of Remithia, and it's called The Giant Dynasty. So, my initial idea from my blog, when I started it a few months ago, was to build a world and give readers or potential readers an insight into that world, talking about details in the world, places, characters, giving an insight into the races that exist in this world, the religions, different kind of languages spoken, and those kind of things. Everything contained in the fantasy fiction world that I created. And the intention was very much for this to be a background to the eventual release of Traitor's Eye, which I always plan to release at some point in 2026. That is still my intention. However, I've realized that there are a few things that are going to take a while. So the developmental editing, the line editing, the proofreading, while I still hope to get it out in 2026, that's going to depend on how quickly that gets done. And also, quite frankly, having the funds to get that done as well. So I'm hoping that I will be able to get that all done and the release will be ready for 2026. However, in the meantime, I wanted to share kind of a taster and a sample of my writing. I'm trying to talk about things about writing books, about the author's journey and chronicling my author journey. And it just seems incomplete without me having a piece of writing out there in the world to be able to be sampled and experienced as my writing. Blogs are really good and a good kind of background information, but a blog isn't a story. And I was really keen to get something out there into the world so people could read and really get immersed into the world of Remithia that I've created. So a little bit of backstory here. And it actually goes beyond the Giant Dynasty and goes into basically the whole raison d'etre of the Chronicles of Remithia name, because it actually started out as the name of a list essentially on my computer, and it was basically a chronological timeline listing things from the very beginning of what happened in Remithia all the way through to Traitor's Eye. And then obviously the Traitor's Eye story would be written in a self-contained book. And then I would continue that where things left off with Traitor's Eye all the way down to the second book, the first book of my series, Gongor's Prophecy. So this chronological list was actually written with the intention of providing backstory, details, and events that lead up to the books, basically, to be able to have a rich source of information to pull from and be able to justify things and enrich the world building. It was never meant for it was never written in the style of a book. I'd written some things, even put footnotes, so it was very much like a historical document rather than a story. There was absolutely no dialogue, there was no description or anything like you would find in a story. And there are parts of that which I definitely don't think could be written into a story. However, once I'd put it together, I kept coming back to the Giant Dynasty and I thought it was really interesting. And then after a while, I thought, actually, I can make this into a story because I really do think that the foundations of it make a really good self-contained story. That was kind of the main inspiration that I had. And so I decided to sit down and write it. It's in the format of an ebook, so it's 20,000, a little bit over 20,000 words. It is very much, a self-contained story, and it's kind of the first gateway into Remithia. And that was the first reason why I decided to write that. Second reason was that I thought it was a really interesting gateway into the Traitor's Eye. So there are some really key things that happen in the Giant Dynasty which affect Traitor's Eye, especially the beginning when it comes to the main character and the main character's motivations. They can be traced directly back to the Giant Dynasty. In fact, one of the first chapters in the book actually references some events that were chronicled in the Giant Dynasty. And so I'd written The Traitor's Eye to be a prelude to the first book of my series, Gongor's Prophecy, and now I've written the Giant Dynasty to be a prelude to that prelude. Just an aside here in terms of timelines of writing. So I finished Gongor's Prophecy, the first book that I wrote, in 2009. And I think it took me about a couple of years to write, but I've been editing it ever since, as I've said before. Same with The Traitor's Eye. I started that out in about 2011 and finished it in 2013, I think, and been editing it ever since. The third book, the second book of the series, was done in about a year. And this one, it took me about 6 weeks or so. So I've made a lot of progress in my writing, even though obviously this is 20,000 words and the others are 70,000 plus words. But in terms of progress in actually getting things done and being quicker, I think I've made some good progress with the amount of time it's taken me to actually get it done. Finally, a real motivation for me was that this story, not only did I think it was a great story in itself, that it provided a great introduction to Traitor's Eye, but also it kind of has a sentimental place for me because it gave me a eureka moment. So when I'd written Traitor's Eye in the first draft, and a few drafts after that as well, and I wanted to get the main character Kilorn to go on a journey to the north, and I had this idea come up very spontaneously in his mind, and it was actually very weak in terms of motivation. You know, a reader would look through that and say, you know, why has he suddenly come up with this idea? And so when I was writing the Chronicles of Romithia, my notes, my chronology, I started thinking about this, and then I wrote the chronology of the Giant Dynasty, and I was like, this is the perfect motivation that Kilorn will have to go on this journey to the north. And so having that make sense finally, it really kind of stood out to me amongst all the other chronicles and all the other key events in the timeline. And that was a main reason why I decided to take this story and make it into its own story rather than something else. And it also helps that the way I've written it as well has been done in a way that there are minimal spoilers, and actually I think will build some intrigue for readers to then want to go on to read The Traitor's Eye. So I guess you want to know, or hopefully you want to know, where you can get this. Well, I have good news. It's available right now, and you can click on the comment below. It's available for $70. I'm kidding. It's available absolutely for free. All you have to do is click on the link below in the comment section. I've left it there where you can sign up to my newsletter, and as a gift you will get the ebook, The Giant Dynasty, absolutely for free. I was just kidding about the $70 before. So that's the video. I'm really excited to have finally finished something and finally get something out into the world. And I would really love it if you would sign up to my newsletter, get the book, and let me know what you think. It'd be great to get some feedback, and happy to see any posts and comments you have on the book. Thanks very much for watching. Please, if you like this video, give me a like. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you can keep in touch and you won't miss any notifications for future videos as well. Thanks very much and enjoy.